That's a good question. I think the photographers.
She just went barefoot.
Yeah. But I mean, the egos and the like, make this work. And I'm like, sometimes there's no way to make it work.
Right. Yeah.
Size 10.
You're not fitting a 10 and a 7. Sorry. Yeah.
So had all those incredible experiences at the time, towards the end of my New York kind of journey. Gossip Girl was really, it was all the thing. And I actually have some of my creations behind me. So I started making headbands. Blair Waldorf, like, wore all these, was one of the characters. Crazy, almost like fascinators. And so I would buy these expensive headbands and then be like, I can make this. I had my little hot glue gun. I show it to a professor at Parsons. He's like, this is amazing. You need to get this into Henry Bendel, which at the time was this amazing shop on Fifth Avenue, you know, next to Bergdorf Goodman's. Saks Fifth Avenue is down the way, and just very high end, not as big as Saks, but bigger than a boutique kind of too. So they have a casting call. It's called an open C for new designers. And if you can get in the door by 9 a.m., you have like 2 minutes, they love your stuff, they'll bring you back for an appointment, for an actual buying appointment. So I got in line probably like 4 a.m. in the morning. It's freezing out. I had like little buckets. Literally, I have to show you just because it's...
Please do.
And so I made these little buckets, and then I made all these like crazy headbands.
Oh, how cute.
Very, very Gossip Girl. Just
yes.
And the buyers are like, we love it. Done. Come back. I came back in a week. They bought the entire collection. And Cami, at this point, I'm just crafting it in my little West Village apartment, using my bed as a table because it's a tiny apartment. So I put a sheet over my bed and hot glue gun in the bed. And then I'm running around to form an LLC. So I'm going downtown New York. I'm trying to source everything. So honestly, I didn't have a business. It was just like, go. But I figured it out. I got the stuff made. They ordered, I still to this day don't know how I did it. They ordered probably like 200 pieces. Like, I had all these styles.
And how fast were you supposed to turn those over? 200 in 2 weeks.
And I'm like, and I'm young, and I'm like, it's freaking Henry Bendel. You just jump and
do it.
So I did it. I got everything in there. They threw me a fashion show.
Wow.
They put my stuff on mannequins that faced Fifth Avenue. And I'm there. And then my sister's pregnant at the time with her first sport. And the very first day of the trunk show, she calls me and she's like, I'm going into labor. Blake is coming. And I'm like, oh. And in that moment, later that day, like, there's this moment and it's just kind of frozen in my memory. I'm taking pictures of the mannequins facing Fifth Avenue and the reflection of like a yellow taxi cab goes by. So I catch it in the window and I thought, it's time to go home. Graduated Parsons.
Yeah.
Incredible opportunities, met the top, like, fulfilled all my dreams. But I want to, being that my parents are gone, I want to see my niece grow up. So I make my way back to Phoenix. And that summer, Barney's was going to open at Scottsdale Fashion Square. And they had an event called The Mannequin is Our Muse. And in fact, ASU was part of it, Arizona Republic, a lot of restaurants.
The Mannequin what? What was it called?
Called The Mannequin is Our Muse.
Is Our Muse. Mm-hmm.
To take blank mannequins and then just be like, go get creative, do your art. So Arizona Republic covered theirs in like newspaper, ASU students did, education themed ones. Sam Fox did one, the restaurateur, Tammy Coe, the cupcake one. And again, everyone kind of did their genre mannequin. I collaborate, again, another ASU college friend, like that group was so awesome. And his name was Bob Wilkinson. And he's an architect. And so I was like, hey, Bob, do you want to do a mannequin together? And he's like, yeah, that'd be fun. So we go to the dollar store and we find these 99 cents rag rugs. And we cover the mannequin. It's this like weird, crazy statue. And she's on display at the mall. And it's, this event. And then the event's over. And Bob's like, that material's really cool. Like, you should keep doing something with it. And I was like, yeah, it would be kind of cool to make like a clutch or something. And so that is the catalyst of Soul Carrier, was rag rugs. Reached back out to that friend Andy Brown I had mentioned. He had moved back. He had some fashion industry experience in LA. I was like, Andy, I'm thinking of doing this, but I I just kind of need help and some guidance. And so we got together and he was like, well, I think you should do a different brand than the headbands. It's a very different thing.
Sure.
And he suggested the word carrier for a name. He's like, I think you should just do something super clean and crisp. And I was like, I really like that, but it's missing something. It needs more. And earlier that day, I'd had breakfast with another really dear friend who I often talk about, my friend Cameron. And we were talking about spiritual stuff and soul. And I was like, wait a minute, Andy, what if we put soul in front of carrier? I look it up. No one's taken it. I grabbed the domain.
What are the odds? Like now, for sure, that would have been scooped up.
Right?
There's young girls at fashion school right now looking that up, and they're like, Jen's already got it.
Totally, right? Totally. And so the fact that it was available, because you're like, okay, you're going to need a domain and a website and all the things. And I want it to all, I don't want to have to do like soulcarrier.net or something.
Right.
So grabbed it. Andy and I tried to find manufacturing here in Phoenix, which Phoenix is not manufacturing.
Not a hotbed for fashion manufacturing.
And being the rag rugs are really difficult to sew through. They're thick. Eventually I moved away from that material because it is a cumbersome textile. But then I went off to LA and then I went back to New York and I went to Jersey looking for factories. And over time got to a place where I'm like, I love leather and I love using it as a designer. And so started, finding leather and even myself sewing leather, which was way easier to sew on a sewing machine than a rag rug. Mm-hmm. And so at one point, actually a couple, let's talk about it, and when things go off, a couple from New York reach out to me and they're like, we have a factory in León, Mexico. We found you on the internet. Like, we think we could help you. The wife was in PR and marketing. They had a showroom in New York. So I fly to New York. I meet them. They seem great. They make me a couple prototypes. And I was like, awesome. Next step, let's meet in León. I want to vet the factory. I want to walk the factory floor. And they're like, no. It's like, what do you mean no? Like, the fact that you said no is a big red flag and we'll probably work together. So we go our separate ways. I'm now alerted to the fact that León exists and is a manufacturing capital in Mexico. A lot of tannery.
Where is León in the Mexico layout? What's it near?
It's not on the coast. If you fly from Dallas or LA, it's 2 hours. So it's a short flight. So it's 3 hours total when, I just got to get to Dallas or LA.
Sure.
Just from there. And so I take like an assistant, and at the time I had all these I was working with film students from ASU to just capture content. And I was like, hey, if I buy you, I actually had to get them a passport. I'm like, if I buy you a passport and a ticket, will you come down and film the whole thing? And they're like, yeah, this is amazing. So the three of us go down, Cammie, with no clear game plan other than knowing this is a manufacturing capital. But it would be like someone going to New York and not knowing the garment is
right.
And just be like, we're going to walk the streets. So that's
okay. So time out. So through all of that, because you mentioned several like jaunts here and there, like, were you just flying by the seat of your pants? Did you have a mentor who sort of had some insights into the fashion manufacturing world? Like, where was that all coming from? Like, what was guiding you? Or was it just sheer passion?
I'd say a heavy dose of sheer. A lot of people over the years have come and sat at the Soul Carrier table and had chapters. Mm-hmm. I've always been the one that's there the entire thing. And then sometimes you have the chapters and like, we're not a fit. Let's go our own ways. So there was different probably touch points and stories maybe I've skimmed over. But, and it's like, oh yeah, let's try this. And then like, no, that's not what I want. And my vision is more to go here. So yes and no. There's people that have kind of dipped in and have been a mentor, and then the last couple seasons. At that point, the going down to León was, I think it was the fact that they had alerted me to like, this is the thing. And being that I knew that I'm like, I'm going to need manufacturing. I was like, I'm not a maker. Like I'm more like the designer. I have the vision. Someone else is going to do the production on this.
And so it's an interesting point too, where some someone, a couple in this instance, show up in your life. And even though that relationship didn't continue, it was a catalyst to like lead you to the next step, right? Like, I think sometimes we can think when we, arrive at an opportunity or a perceived opportunity, right? Like, oh, it's going to be this. And it's like, no, actually that was just really to give you a heads up that there's this whole place that exists that now you can go explore and find the right partnership. So very interesting that they were just a little.
And it's happened so many times. And then, so I go down to Leon, I find someone who makes the bags, work with them for a bit, but it's still raw. And as I take it to buyers, they're like, oh, your product's still not as finished. So I go down again and meet another group of artisans, and then things get a little more polished, but still not a full-on factory, like still family. And I'm needing to coordinate. I need to get zippers and leather. And I was like, my dream, it was always like, okay, I want to roll up to a factory and they're like, here's all our zippers, here's all our buttons, here's 100 different kinds of leather. And I'm just picking and choosing versus these other people. It's very much like, here's all the food, go make dinner, but I got to like bring it to them. So I have an intern go down to Mexico City, and she meets some guy and she's like, Skype with him. He's got connections down in Mexico, like a factory. So I Skype with this factory and they're like, oh, we know your brand. It's like, what? I'm like, we know your patterns. They're like, we've made your bags before. And I'm like, my mind is just like going. I was like, what? It turns out that couple in New York, they were using this factory, acting like it was their own, but really they're just a middleman. It would be as if I was like, hey, Cammie, I've got this factory. I own it. And then upcharging. So we had the biggest laugh over that. And the factory found out the couple were doing that and they fired them. And now to this day, it's called Style Manufacturers. That's who I work with directly. And they're amazing. And full on, their competition is the factory that makes all the Dooney and Burke bags.
Wow.
So they're second largest factory in Leon, and every time I'm down there, like they have a cafeteria, so they feed their employees like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like with someone's birthday, and there's like balloons and cake, and that's important to me because I have so many messages and brand pillars that I'm like, I can't have this bag being made in a shoddy place,
right?
And then stand for integrity and authenticity and treating people with kindness. So I'm like, both have to match. It's been really good to know that they're just an awesome group of people. And I love them. I mean, it's just last year was hard because I didn't produce anything and we weren't in contact. And I'm like, oh, I miss, texting. We just go back and forth. So that's my factory side. And then I sell online, but the majority of my business, or where I found my sweet spot, is like high-end resorts and spas, like a Four-Season spa boutique, or Mountain Shadows or Royal Palms. And like at Mountain Shadows, they actually have a gift shop. Mm-hmm. So gift shops at these, luxury hotels or the spa boutique. And because my message is a lot of spiritual soul wellness themes, that goes very well with the spa industry. And oh yeah.
Well, so that's the point that I met you at. You weren't quite in there yet. And I remember you were still trying to identify, like you knew who your ideal customer was, but I just remember that, like, how do I get, where are they? Where are they that I can reach them? And so I remember you were kind of working through that process, as well as like some tweaking and rebranding, because I think I met you when you were still in your old kind of branding phase. So you hadn't gone through that transition yet. And it was cool because I could see where you were going and I could see what you were trying to, the challenges you were trying to work through. And you did it in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, shortly thereafter, then you were like rebranding. And then it seems like you got into, once you slipped into that spa and the high-end boutique kind of industry. Yeah.
I think when I met you, I was coming off of trying to chase golf pro shops.
Yes.
Because I had met someone and she kind of was like a mentor guy. I paid her as a consultant and I'm like, this is so not a fit. Because
I remember you saying that it wasn't a fit. Yeah.
I don't know anything about that industry. And a lot of it is like country clubs. So I'm like, it's super exclusive. No one's going to be able to get my bags unless you're a member at these high-end clubs. Now, course, the Four Seasons, it's still exclusive, but anyone can walk up